الأشياء اركاظ وبيس. What do you know? What do you see? How do you feel? Are you here? Is your soul here? Are you cold? إن وعد الله حق. إن وعد الله حق. لو كشف عني الغطاء لازددت يمينا. If the veil of uncertainty is removed from me, I don't increase in certainty. Who are you? المرحوم حيدر غالب. حيدر غالب.
احفر القبر. اي احفر القبر. We've got a lot of narrations that mention you need to prepare for your grave. But I've never seen someone actually dig what could be their own grave. Mulla Ali, you're not afraid of death, are you?
I am. I am actually afraid of death.
In what sense?
Hajj Mustafa, I think about death, and God is my witness, every single day. Every single day, there's not a day that goes past without me thinking something about death. It could be what it's like in the grave. It could be what happens as soon as I die. It could be how it's going to feel when I'm down there. It could be, will I see the Imams or the Prophet? It could be, how will my parents react if I die? That's if they live long enough to see my death. It could be, how will my family react, my children, when I pass? Wallah, there's not a day that goes past that I don't think about death. The main thing that I think about, and it was a narration which I mentioned, and it makes me think about it here. The main thing that I think about is, what will I see? Not what will happen to me, but what will I see? And so before I had a lot of questions, which I was asking myself. Imam Ali, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the Prophet, Islam, Day of Judgment, the book, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Mi'ad, the resurrection, all of this that we've learnt from a young age, is it true? And I've never said this to anyone ever in my life. For fear of judgment, people might think, his iman is probably not strong, or he doesn't know much about his religion, or he needs to be, stronger in his faith. But the one thing that I'm yearning to know is, as soon as I die, everything that I've done, 50, 60, 70 years, could be 35 years, 34 years, everything that I've done, everything that I know, which is to be true, is it actually true? The only time I will find that out is as soon as I die.
Yeah, because no one's come back from death to tell us what they saw.
People can reference it. People say, we've heard stories and video clips about people saying, I've died for like half an hour and something. That's fine. I mean, that's a reference. Quran can make a reference. Ahl Bayt can make a reference to it. But no one will actually 100% certainly know for sure unless you die. Unless you die. And that's why the saying of Imam Ali alayhi salam was very important to me. And it said, لو كشف عني الغطاء ما ازددت يقينا. If the veil is removed from me, I don't increase in certainty. Imam Ali is certain. He knows whether he lives or whether he dies. He knows that there is a God, there is a judgment, there is a mi'ad, there is a resurrection, that everything is true. Well, of course, we strive to be like that, but it's very, very difficult, especially the life that we live.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it to you. It's easier said than done. It's easy for us to say, yes, I'm going to see. And we've heard, you're right. Sometimes we fear being judged, because if I say, oh Allah, is it true? But the truth of the matter is, even though, yes, I can say I believe, but how will Imam appear to me? Is he going to be a vision? Is it, as my soul return to my, all these questions will be answered once you're in the grave. Otherwise, you can only try to imagine. It's difficult to imagine. And like you said, the Quran references it. كل نفس ذائقة الموت. Every soul. And I always say, there's a taste. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is precise in using the word da'iqa. Will taste that. So there's something you're going to feel. How you feel it. No, but I want to ask you, you mentioned your family.
Yeah.
Like, I always think, how will my family be okay? How will they survive? I'm everything for my children. I'm everything for my kids. I'm everything for my... Do you think the same?
100.
Do you think, how will Hussein be? How will my daughter be? How will my miss...
Yeah. I mean, yes, that is what I think about, but my relationship with death is a bit more personal and a bit more selfish in that sense. My desperate yearning to find the truth is for me, for my to have my mind at ease. That's my selfish kind of relationship with death. But of course, I do think about how my family would react, and even today, I'm in the land of Karbala. My family is away from me, and I do get updates from my wife, who tells me, Hussein is doing this, he's saying this, Layla's doing this and saying that. She's saying it is a struggle. Every day is always a struggle with kids and family and responsibilities. So then, and that's just me being away from them a week. Now imagine how forever I was away from them, and it does play in my mind. I would hate, like, I would, the moment that I feel like my father's going to pass away, that's also something else I don't talk about, and it scares me because it's a dunya attachment. my family, like my father, my mother. It's a dunya attachment. Whereas, again, to be better Muslims or to be more faithful or to be more righteous, you need to think of it as, our family, they're not ours to own, and they will return to their Lord, and we have to understand that, our parents, all of us here are on the journey. It's just another stage of that journey, and you have to remember them in du'as. But it's difficult because anytime I think about my father and potentially putting him in a grave is difficult. Experiencing death. I had my grandfather about 10 years ago, and my grandmother 2 years ago, and they're not my parents, but they're my grandparents, and I can't begin to imagine how my uncles felt having to put their mother in a grave, or having to put their father in a grave.
Did you attend both funerals?
Hajj Mustafa, I didn't just attend both funerals, but for my grandfather especially, I experienced the whole process of death from the beginning all the way to the end. From the moment he took his last breath, I was there, to the moment they put the last piece of trab on his body, on his grave. That first moment to the last moment, I was there every single step of the way. My grandfather was ill. For the last 10 years of his life, he was paralyzed. He was very ill. He sometimes he would get better, but other times his situation would get worse, until it reached the stage where for 3 days he then wouldn't speak. He'd lost all sense of speaking. Before he would speak a bit, but for 3 days he would lose all sense of speaking. Now the problem with that is that he hated hospitals. We didn't ask him why, but he hated hospitals. He didn't want to die in a hospital. He knew that his time was coming. Something in him knew that his time was coming. He did not want to die in a hospital. Even though he couldn't speak, we could tell just by his eye movements, his limited hand movements, that he just take me out of the hospital. For 3 days, we fed him, we took care of him. The doctor said, look, we're trying, until it reached a moment where the doctor said, look, he doesn't have long to live. You have to make a decision. And so it's almost as if he fought for 3 days just to stay alive, just so that we can take him out of the hospital into his own home.
So you brought him back home?
We brought him back home. When we brought him back home, within 3 hours, he passed away. Within 3 hours. It's like almost he said to himself, listen, I'm now with my loved ones.
Everyone was there.
Everyone was there that were in London at the time, so not all of his sons or daughters. And within 3 hours he passed away. There were a couple of things that happened.
This is your mother's father?
This is my mother's father, yeah. There were a couple of things that happened during that time where it was quite significant. First and foremost, yes, he wouldn't speak, but towards the end of his life, he would always look, he would constantly look to the right. In that room, wallah, I felt a presence. I felt there's something here that I can't put my finger on it. I can't see, but I know that there's something or someone here. There's a presence here. It was a small room. He had a chair, kind of like an extendable chair, and he was lying down like this, and his mouth was open, just breathing. He couldn't move his hands anymore. Just his eyes. He was only looking towards the right.
Someone was there.
Someone was there next to him, reading him Quran. My uncle Haidar, he was there reading him Surah, I think it was Surah Yasin at the time, right? But Haidar was with him. Everyone else was just sitting there worried. Haidar was reading the Quran, and all of a sudden I heard his voice break. Haidar's voice break.
Your uncle's voice.
Yeah, as if he's looking at his dad, and something was happening. His breathing was now erratic. Before it was just a constant in, out, but then it just became in, and then it stopped for a few seconds. When it stopped for a few seconds, Haidar realized something is happening now. So his voice broke. He carried on the Quran, and I'm looking at I'm looking at Haida, but I'm also having to look after my uncle, the other uncle, Ala, who was also there, and my grandmother who was also there, and my sister who's also there. So I'm trying to kind of comfort them.
And
but
your mother?
My mother wasn't there. My mother wasn't there. Try it, she might, she wasn't there.
Maybe best.
My mother wasn't there for her dad and for her mum. So I could tell something was happening, and I felt like everyone was just in their own world. But I'm like, hold on, this man, there's something that needs to happen. I know something needs to happen with this man. He's not on the Qibla. He wasn't lying down on the Qibla. So I thought, okay, I need to take responsibility of something, because my uncle now is in another world. He was crying, knowing something was going to happen. My other uncle was also in another room, just couldn't believe what was happening. They were very attached to their father, very, very attached to their father. And so I said, listen, Khalu, please, uncle, I need to turn this chair around. So we turned the chair around, and my father wasn't there as well. So I felt like
it fell on your shoulders.
It fell on my shoulders. I had to do the talqeen. So here I am saying to my own grandfather,
yeah, if
Munkar and Nakir comes to you, say La ilaha illallah, this is my book, this is my imam, and I'm here shouting in his ear, and no one was, it was just me alone. It was just me alone. So until we called the paramedics, and then that's when we knew he passed away, because he wasn't breathing at all. He'd lost his final breath. When they realized, everyone was in their own world. My sister started crying, my grandmother started crying, my uncle started crying. And so when the paramedics came, they said, lift his body and put him onto the floor. So we lifted his body, put him onto the floor, we laid him down. I had to go next to him. They said to me over the phone, before the paramedics came, they said to me, put his body on the floor and do these next procedures. So I'm on the phone to the ambulance, and then they said to me, open his mouth and first try to resuscitate him. So I'm sitting over my grandfather's dead body and trying to resuscitate him. Like, these things you only see in the movies. I didn't know what I was doing, but I followed the
instructions.
The instructions. So I'm trying to resuscitate him, nothing. Nothing. They said, okay, now put your ear, open his mouth and put your ear next to his mouth to hear any breath. I heard nothing other than clicks.
Allahu Akbar.
Till this day, I didn't research or anything like that. I heard just clicks. I can't even mimic the sound as well. It's just light clicks. Click. Click. It just came from his mouth. Just 3 or 4 clicks. And then the paramedics came. They did their experiments, and they said they pronounced him dead at the scene. They said he's passed away. I'm very sorry to tell you, he's passed away. So I had to kind of control myself. My uncles were in another world. They were crying. Everyone was crying. And then they brought out the bag. They brought out a bag, lifted the body. For them, it's just a procedure. They've probably seen this many times. Put the body, zip over the bag, take him to the morgue. And then I had to kind of start the process of the janazah and the embalming, so it can be taken to a different country, and I have to call this and call that and everything kind of. And then once I felt like it was the amana that I had to give to my uncles, because the other ones, the elder uncles that had to look after
that lived here as well.
That lived here. So once I gave them the body,
obviously everything, the procedure of kafan, ghusl,
we did all
salah, done where?
In London.
All of that was done.
All of that was done.
Do you remember participating?
I was there, but I was always in the background.
But you were watching the
I was watching everything. I watched the washing. I watched the tashiyah. I watched the praying. I watched the takfeen. It was beautiful. I did a bit. I was very wary of it because they have a very strict process. Not everyone can touch the body, because they say that the body is very, very sensitive. Any light movement that is, they could feel it. So I didn't want to hurt my grandfather, should we say. So
in what sense was it beautiful?
The smell. Hajj Mustafa, the misk smell was beautiful. His face was smiling. The way he was just wrapped up. Yes, death can be ugly in that sense. Yes, death can be horrible to witness and experience. But for that moment, just for that moment alone, I felt like I felt like he looks nice. He looks prepared. He looks prepared to go into the grave. And so when I gave them the body back, that's when I almost like I rested. And I'm like,
the amana has
the amana, I've given back the amana.
And
so
he was buried in Karbala.
He was buried in Karbala, in one of these graves somewhere here, even. Yeah, he was buried in Karbala. So yeah, I witnessed the last piece of dust on his grave, and I also witnessed the moment that he passed away.
I remember quite a big funeral in London.
Yeah.
Many ulama, many senior people from the community attended.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the same happened here?
Yeah. He was very well.
I've seen a picture of you, a photo of you holding his photo at the front of the janazah.
Yeah. He was very well known here in Karbala. He grew up in Karbala. He lived most of his life in Karbala. So most of the locals know him. Most of the respectful people. Yeah, it was very, very befitting of his status as a Khadim al-Hussein. One time, Hajj Mustafa, I remember it was the 10th of Muharram, and I was a young boy. I didn't really understand much about Muharram other than just going to majalis and seeing my friends. But I remember that one day, he would not stop crying. From the moment he sat in the car to go to the Husayniyah, he would not stop crying. And I'm like, is it that, like, what's going on here? Only now do I realize that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam meant so much to him. So he was known as a Khadim al-Hussein alayhi salam, known as a servant of Imam al-Hussein. So people paid their respects for his statue. That was my grandfather. My grandmother, she went too early. She went way too early. She didn't have an illness, my grandmother. She didn't have that much of a bad. It's not like for my grandfather, sometimes you can prepare for it, because for 10 years he was in a wheelchair, bed bound, and it's like you're mentally prepared for it, you're physically prepared for it. But with my grandmother, she was the life and soul of our family. The life and soul of our family. She was
this needs to sit down. I remember that.
She
again,
was.
This is your mother's mother.
Mother's mother.
Who if people know, would have the majalis in her home.
She would have majalis.
She dedicated her life to the Ahl al-Bayt.
Haji, every single Friday, without fail, she would have Sufrat Ruqayyah. Every single Friday. If it's raining, if it's a 2-hour bus journey, if it's someone can't take her in the car, if it's her son's whatever it is, every single Friday she had a Sufrat Ruqayyah, and she would give the proceeds towards charity or whatever it is. She established within her community the Farhat al-Zahra. Every year everyone looked forward to Farhat al-Zahra.
And she passed away 2 years ago during the COVID pandemic, so it was even more difficult for people to...
Yeah. So the way it happened is she wasn't feeling very well. And she would often tell my father, every time she wants to go to Iraq or Iran, she'd often tell my father, Abu Ali, can you please book me a ticket? This is my departure date. This is my return date. Without fail for the last 10 years. This time, she called my father and she said to him, Abu Ali, ihjizli, book me a ticket please for this date. And my father was waiting for the return date. And he said to her, okay, Amma, what about the return? And she's like, Abu Ali, just do the book, just do the departure.
One way.
Just one way. There's something inside me, I feel like, I have a feeling. Just book me one way, or Allah Kareem. So he's like, okay, we booked the one way. Before she left, so he booked a month in advance. So before she left, about 3 days before she left, she felt very ill. Very, very ill. She was in hospital. No, she went to Iran first. And there she felt very, very ill. Now, again, she almost had this ihsas. She had this feeling like my time is up now. And she even, without us even knowing, she رتبت أمورها, يعني she prepared her affairs in London before she left. Like something inside knew that this is my last time that I travel, and I won't be coming back to London. Now in Iran, again, something miraculous happened. Now in Iran, when she did pass away, she had her absolute wish to be buried in Karbala. There was no other question. She can't be buried anywhere else but Karbala.
That was her will.
That was her will. And now in Iran, she passed away in Iran. And with the whole COVID situation,
impossible.
You can't transfer a whole janazah from one country to another. It was almost impossible. I wasn't there to understand the details of it, but miraculously she made it. Her body made it to to Karbala, and she was buried. One thing that I spoke to my uncle about, he said when I was in the, my uncle says to me, I was surprisingly calm. Everyone was losing it, because again, this came as a massive shock to us. A massive shock to us, because again, she was the life and soul. She was so kind. Her bag, her bag always had something for us. Either it's a sweet or a dua book or something. Her bag had that famous bag that she had. It always had something for us. So she was always giving me advice, wisdom, telling me do this, telling me do that. Her prayers were always there, on point, Quran, everything. Sometimes she because she left Iraq at a young age, so she wasn't really that much educated, so she had to kind of learn Quran and learn ziyarat and learn at a later stage of her life. So often she'd say, Bibi Ali, تعال اقعد يمي اقرأ لي هاي الدعاء or this ziyarah or this piece of Quran. So I'd sit down and read with her خطية. Anyway, my uncle was saying that because everyone was losing it, everyone was just crying and everything when we're bringing the body down, because that's the moment where that's it. You're not going to see this body anymore. But he said for some reason he was inside, and this is deep, but I'm talking like,
yeah, it's much deeper.
He goes, Ali, I was so calm. There was a buruda, there was a coolness to her grave, a sense of coolness to her grave. And so when I brought her,
calm and tranquility,
I put her in, and I said to her, listen, Mama, it's okay, you're gonna go to a better place. Imam Hussein inshallah is going to meet you. Fatima Zahra, the person that you served your whole life, is going to meet you inshallah, don't worry. And I felt like, yes, there is a struggle in the grave. Yes, it is constricted, but I just felt like there's a lot of space for her. I felt like this could be okay for her. Yani. So he put her in, and then they gave her the Turbat al-Hussein, I think, at the time, inside her mouth as well. And yeah, so he came out of the grave. They put the dust over the grave, and that was it. There's nothing more that this body can do to increase in thawab or have any kind of say her personally. She has no say now in how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will see her, because that's her book finished. Her chapter is done. The only people that she can rely on are her loved ones. In terms of sending du'as and ziyaras and reading the Quran and sending as much thawab as they can to her body.
Again, she deserved a respectful funeral, and I remember even in London when we first heard, we rushed to your home, and again, so many people attended her funeral, and as they say, well-deserved funeral for someone who served Imam Hussein. But you know, for me, every time I'm at a funeral, I don't know about you, and I look around, and again, I also buried my grandmother. I wasn't there at my grandfather's funeral, but my grandmother, I was there one day because I came before the body. The body, you know, from London it takes a few days, and I came before, and they said, my dad called me, so I had to go. I got the guy that does the digging of the grave, and I literally stood over him as he dug the grave, and I took a photo, and I said, Baba, Qabr Bibi's ready, I've got it. And I said, we've got a family group, and just seeing the grave upset them, because they're like, that's it. And I was there and then alhamdulillah in Najaf, when we done the funeral afterwards, the Fatiha ceremony, so many people attended. But every funeral, whether it's a family member or whether it's someone that I don't even know, and I see people attending their funeral, I just remember Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And I say, yani, people who call themselves Khuddam al-Hussein get this deserved funeral where hundreds, sometimes thousands of people attend, but the person that they mourned
Didn't have a funeral.
Didn't have a funeral. No one was there. And that's what, for me, I say, subhanallah, you know, Hussein is so great. Hussein is so great. And I'm in his city. He's so great that this person who did not have a funeral, he honors his servants. He says, my servants, they remembered me in their life, so I'm going to honor them. And this is the first thing that comes to mind, that look how fortunate we are, that because we're associated with this man, 1,400 years, just one association with this man the fact that we call ourselves, we claim that we serve him, he honors us. You know, people attend our funerals and because of Imam al-Hussein. And I'm sure, you know, and I'll ask you to answer this. What's the impact that these two people who we shared their story have on Mulla Ali today? The Mulla Ali Fadhil that people see on TV, Mulla Ali Fadhil people see on YouTube, the Mulla Ali Fadhil attend their majlis. How much of that is Hajji Thalatha? And how much is that is of Hajjiyya Ali? Or sorry,
Muhammad.
Muhammad.
Yeah.
How much of their impact is what we see in Mulla Ali today?
I mean, like I said, they were the ones that introduced Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam to my mother, and my mother introduced Imam al-Hussein to me. So everything that my mother knows about Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam came from them. And as I mentioned the story when I was a young boy, and I didn't understand it at the time, but now I understand. When my grandfather, and just for the benefit of the viewers, if they want to recite a Fatiha, it's Haji Ahmed al-Shifathi, and my grandmother is Hajjiyya Muhammad. They had this. It's almost like they had this unwavering, and they know nothing in this world but Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, but the Ahlul Bayt. Their whole lives literally revolved around them. From Friday, Tuesday, my grandfather, his whole life was how often can I go to the Husayniyah? So Tuesday he'd go for Dua Tawassul, Thursday for Dua Qumayl, Friday for the regular programs. Then he'd be like itching for another majlis or any kind of program that he could go and attend and commemorate or celebrate the births of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. And that love was given to my mum, and my mum, it passed down to me. My mother was again, everything about her life is all about the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. She is a reciter of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. So she taught me recitation from a very, very young age. So what I see from you know, anything good that comes from me comes from my parents. My father as well was the exact same thing with his parents. Although his parents and my grandma, they passed away when I was very, very young. I didn't have that much of a relationship with them. Whereas my grandmother and my grandfather from my mum's side, I lived with them. So that's why it was more of a connection.
Impact.
But my father as well had the same upbringing. Ahlul Bayt was everything to their lives. And so they fed me that love from a young age. So everything good that comes from me, that people that they see on TV or whatever it is, comes from them. And anything bad is from myself.
And we started this program, even though I say to many people afterwards when they ask me, I say, for you it's a program, for me I'm not even thinking about, it's just a one-to-one conversation with someone that I know about death.
Yeah.
So we started this convo about fear of death. And I said, I asked you, you know, whose grave is this? And may Allah, I hand on my heart, and I'm sure you know this, but I love you as a brother in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I hope I never see the day where I have to go through any sadness with you.
No.
So may Allah prolong your life, and especially inshallah in the way of the Ahlul Bayt. But do you think that when your time is when you're ready to go, what will you tell Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam?
When I feel all alone,
this is the flag of Hussein and the marble of Hussein. There for you, Mulla Ali. Allah يطول عمرك قلبي.
God, just let him accept me, please.
By my side, I feel tired out of place. Yet in you I confide, I call you. There's been nights that I cried for your love and embrace, yet still hope cannot die. I hear you.
accept me. Everything that I've done in this world, just accept me for who I am. Or just give me one look. That's all I want. Just one look of mercy, that's all I want. Just accept me, that's it. Just accept me.
When I stand for you and pray, I'm in need of you, my master, as I raise my hands and say, وما لي لا أبكي أرى نفسي تخادعني وأيامي تخاتلني الله فما لي لا أبكي لخروج نفسي ولظلمة قبري Now my heart fills with hope. Oh Allah, you saved me. I hold on to your rope. So blessed I am for thee. Without you, I'm worthless. In a blink, all my years. So to you I'll confess all my sins. So I'll raise my hands high, my head bowed, shedding tears. And I know as I cry,